Good to have you with us at Roundhouse Radio 98.3. I'm Kirk LaPointe. I'll be your host until 8 o'clock. We are continuing. In fact, this is actually the conclusion of 11 Vancouver area riding candidates discussions. I'm really privileged to have two of the three major candidates in the election here in the studio with me. Melanie Mark is the MLA for Vancouver-Mount Pleasant, and she's representing the NDP. And Jerry Kroll is the Green Party candidate in Mount Pleasant. Good to have you both with us.
Thanks, Kirk.
I want to point out Conny Lin was invited. We thought that she was going to come, and she chose not to come. So we'll continue with the two of you. I've started each of these conversations by asking people what makes them want to do this for a living. You have other options. I know, Jerry, you're in business. I know, Melanie, you have a great background. And you were recently elected in a by-election. So what makes you want to be an MLA?
I really didn't feel like I had a choice. I worked for 8 years at the representative's office. We advocated and came out with report after report after report trying to make changes to the government to improve the lives for vulnerable children. And it didn't happen fast enough. After 8 years, there was just constant fighting from the Liberal government with Marielle and Trappel LaFond. Yeah. So when the opportunity came up here in Mount Pleasant, I thought, I'm going to put my name in the hat and run for it. And the community that I know so well, that I grew up in, that has so much history. So for me, it was not having a choice and naturally being an advocate, someone who's had experience speaking up. So
you felt almost more than an emotional pull. It was almost like a physical pull.
Yeah, there was no way. Yeah. I don't think we can afford 4 more years of Christy Clark. And being an advocate, knowing that MLAs have an influence in the legislature on how what priorities get set, I didn't see the government making enough commitment to children and youth and families.
Yeah, Jerry Kroll, you could be doing a lot of other things with your day today. You're here campaigning. You're in the last legs of this campaign. But what drew you to it? What drew you to the idea of becoming an MLA?
Well, Kirk, the thing that really drew me to this campaign is accountability. 26 years, Vancouver-Mount Pleasant has had the same NDP representation, and we still have the most impoverished neighborhood in Canada. 26 years of the NDP being in power, in opposition, and quite frankly, nothing being done. As a business person...
Nothing or not enough?
Both.
Not enough.
Both.
Well, some things
quite frankly, I've talked to Andrew Weaver, and we believe we can do more in 26 weeks than the NDP has done for Vancouver-Mount Pleasant in 26 years. And it offends me, and I think it insults the voter to see somebody stand up representing the NDP in this riding, suggesting that if they get elected, here's what we'll do. I think after 26 years, the voters of Vancouver-Mount Pleasant have seen enough.
Has it made any difference, though, that the NDP has only occupied the seat of government for a handful of those years? These have ostensibly been either Liberal or social credit years.
Well, if you're an MLA, you're getting paid to be an MLA. You're getting paid to reach across the aisle. You're getting paid to get things done. If you can't get things done, you should take a knee, return your check, and admit you're not getting anything done. And I think the results in this riding, in particular in the downtown east side, speak for themselves, and change has to happen. And Andrew Weaver and the BC Green Party are that change.
Melanie Mark, I suppose you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, well, with all due respect, I think we need to tell the truth on some of these issues. I've been elected for 62 weeks. I got elected in a by-election, so I'm a new face for the party. The first Indigenous woman to ever serve in the BC legislature. I'm bringing forward a voice that's never been heard in the legislature on important public policy issues that aren't just impacting Vancouver-Mount Pleasant, but the province, truth and reconciliation, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I've sat in the legislature 3 times across from Christy Clark, who has the same callous approach to regular British Columbians in this province. So I would just like to say, Jerry, with all due respect, understanding how opposition works, you don't have a say. You can advocate, you can ask the government to be accountable, but at the end of the day, the government gets to decide. And Christy Clark has been in power for not her entirely, but her government has been in power for 16 years. And if you want to talk about the downtown east side, with all due respect, my dad died down here. He was looking out for his interests. And the people in the downtown east side that are impacted by fentanyl, what has Christy Clark done? Knowing for 3 years that the numbers were on the rise. So I think we just, I want to be respectful here about the facts. And the facts are, I've been elected for 62 weeks, and I'm a new face that people are very excited about around this province.
Jerry Kroll, let's unpack that statement as much as possible in this case. So, Melanie's point in this is that, look, number one, she's a new person in this. Number two, the role itself doesn't really confer a great deal of authority. It confers an advocacy position in opposition, not a powerful one as part of the dynamic of a legislature.
Yeah, if you're going to run as MLA, you have to be able to get things done, not come up with excuses. I said in 26 weeks, we can do more in 26 years. 62 weeks is way more than 26 weeks. And to say, I've been in here, I'm a new face. The NDP has been in here for 26 years. It actually comes down to leadership.
But what do you think you could accomplish in 26 weeks in a riding like this, where many of the challenges have proven to be almost intractable for a succession of federal, provincial, municipal governments, nonprofit sector, Indigenous leadership? I mean, there has been a real stasis around many of the elements of the issues that beguile a district like this. What could you do in 26 weeks?
Well, where to begin? I can't really think of anything that hasn't been presented to me, from home affordability in Vancouver-Mount Pleasant to safety on the streets, to the protection of the heritage of Chinatown, to the fentanyl crisis. 1,000 people a year dying on the streets. That's 3 times the traffic fatality rate. Where to begin? Mm-hmm. And to have somebody stand up and say...
Where would you begin then? Sorry. Where would you begin if you have that 26 weeks? That would be better than the 26 years of NDP occupation in the legislature for this district. Where would you be able to go?
One of the first things that has to happen is take care of the people who are most at risk. And one of the things that has been championed, I'm shocked that neither the NDP nor the Liberals have ever even broached this, is guaranteed minimum income. How can people live today on $600 a month? It's unbelievable. Yeah. And having a guaranteed minimum income to provide people with the funds that they need for housing, for food, and to take care of themselves actually saves the government money instead of running around afterwards and trying to solve the issues that come from this kind of poverty.
Right.
That's the first thing that will be done.
So an income,
but there's a litany of things.
Yeah, income support program. Melanie Mark, I've heard the NDP address issues like the static welfare rate that we have in our province that has kept a lot of people below the poverty line, well below the poverty line, made it difficult for them to get things like rental accommodation in this very riding. What's the NDP's plan for that?
If I may, I'd like to speak to a couple of the remarks that were made about being in the legislature. I think fighting for people like Alex Gervais and giving voice to his story as a young person that was in care who took his own life out of a hotel room, left alone by the Ministry for Children and Family. Our pressure in the legislature gave Christy Clark no choice but to increase the budget for Ministry for Children and Family. David Eby, fighting in the legislature, exposing the housing crisis, gave the Liberals no choice but to call the summer session last year. So I think there is a lot that can be done. I just want to give some respect to being...
advocacy doesn't...
It does.
Isn't impotent.
No, we saved, people came through my office daily saying that they were facing housing issues, and rewrote letters, and we did the best we could to help them navigate those systems. But I want to add another point, and that is when you write a letter like I did to Minister Lake and Minister Coleman around housing and health, around the fentanyl issue, it took them 2 months to get back to me. So I think it's a little bit rich to talk about what can be done in 26 days, but I'm going to go back to your question. 26 weeks. I'm going to go back to your question. I did the welfare challenge for the last 2 years. 2 years ago, it was $21 a week to live off of food. And this last year, it was $18 a week based on inflation. So we know that people are struggling. Christy Clark, and I'm sorry that, Conny Lin didn't take the time to be here. This is testament of Christy Clark's track record, not being there for vulnerable people. We are going to immediately increase the rates by $100. That is an immediate action that we're going to take once we form government.
$100 a month to bring it to what, $10.75? Is that right? Do I have the right numbers?
It's $6.90 a month. It will be $7.90.
Sorry, yeah.
We're also going to be giving rebates to renters. Renters have been ignored by Christy Clark's government. Okay. She's been an advocate for people that can buy a home for over $1 million, but she's forgotten the other 50% of people that rent in this province. So there's a lot that we would be doing to mitigate the crisis that people are feeling right now. Everything from healthcare, housing, their education. People are feeling pinched by Christy Clark, who's been an advocate for the rich.
Okay. Let's hold those thoughts and take a break in our conversation. We're going to come back after the break and continue our conversation with Melanie Mark, who is the MLA for the NDP in the Mount Pleasant riding here in Vancouver, and with Jerry Kroll, who's the Green Party candidate. You're listening to Roundhouse Radio 98.3, and I'm Kirk LaPointe.